Here are the topics that we will be presenting throughout the course of this presentation. On the first slide, we have the project abstract, which goes into what the purpose of the project was and what we will be researching. The next slides will go over what is the Fedora distribution. Slides 6 through 12 will go through the installation of Fedora, and slides 13 through 14 will go through what are the new features that Fedora has to offer. Slide 15 will review what is the CentOS distribution. Slides 16 through 17 will do a comparison between CentOS and RedHat and Fedora. Slides 18 through 23 will review an installation of CentOS on the VirtualBox Virtual Machine Manager. Slide 24 will review the use cases for CentOS and why you would want to use CentOS. Slide 25 reviews what is RedHat Linux distribution. Slide 26 reviews the history of RedHat and how they came to be as a company. Slides 27 through 28 reviews the installation of RedHat on a virtual machine and a bootable USB stick. Slide 29 reviews the comparison against CentOS, and slide 30 reviews the notable apps that would be used for RedHat distribution Linux. Slide 31 reviews the possible use cases you would have for RedHat, and slide 32 reviews our project summary and what we had learned. Slide 33 reviews the resources that might be best used for future study, and then we will end it with our conclusions and our references for the project. The purpose of this project was to learn and read more about the different distributions of the Linux operating system. To get the most out of the project, we focused our aim to learn primarily about Red Hat Enterprise Linux family of distributions. Besides researching the distribution specifics between Fedora, CentOS, and Red Hat, we directed our examinations on what the installation processes were, what a basic server setup might look like, and pointing out useful features each operating system has to offer. By increasing our knowledge on this popular family of Linux distributions, we hope to be able to acknowledge the point and purpose of using these different flavors in specific situations. There are over 19 different notable distributions in the Red Hat Enterprise Linux family tree. The main applications for these operating systems regard server-based environments which have options of paid support or support through online communities. Many of the distributions have paid enterprise-level support options, but other derivatives are free and offer extensive open-source capabilities. Because of this, Red Hat Enterprise Linux products are some of the most stable and most viable options for creating the world's strongest supercomputers. Red Hat Enterprise Linux products will be utilized and researched more in the future as more data crunching must be done and stronger systems are needed to be created to crunch advanced data sets.
Fedora is a Linux distribution developed by the Fedora project, which is largely supported by Red Hat, an IBM subsidiary, with additional funding from other companies. Fedora contains software distributed under various free and open source licenses and aims to be on the leading edge of free technologies. Fedora is the upstream source of the commercial Red Hat Enterprise Linux distribution, and subsequently CentOS as well. The much-awaited Fedora 33 was released on October 27, 2020, after a patient wait from the fans and enthusiasts. The new Fedora 33 workstation comes with the greatly improved GNOME 3.38 desktop. If you're not familiar with GNOME, it is much recommended to try Ubuntu to get familiarized with GNOME. Then you can try Fedora. The installation of Fedora 33 can be performed in a virtualized environment such as parallel desktops, VirtualBox, VMware, KVM, or a dedicated machine such as a laptop or a server. So let's get started. So step 1 is downloading Fedora 33 ISO. There are two choices, Fedora Workstation or Fedora Server. Fedora Workstation is a polished, easy-to-use operating system for laptop and desktop computers with a complete set of tools for developers and makers of all kinds. And Fedora Server is a powerful, flexible operating system that includes the best and the latest data center technologies. It puts you in control of all your infrastructures and services. However, for this guide, we'll be installing Fedora Workstation. Step 2. Create a bootable USB device. Once you download your pick, you can create a bootable USB if the installation is done on a laptop or a physical server hardware. For Linux Unix users, dd command can be used for this. To do so, first identify the name of your USB device partition. Then run the following code replacing ST with the name of your USB. The command will be linked in the description below. Wait until the command completes, then proceed to boot your system from the USB stick. You can also install and use Fedora Media Writer, which I'm about to show you. After your bootable media is ready, place in your bootable device in your computer, reboot, and press the requisite keys that will lead you to the bootable menu depending on your laptop or computer configuration. Once you choose the installation media, USB or DVD, choose Start Installation as shown below. After that, wait for the media check-in to be complete. There is a much easier way to create a bootable USB device to install Fedora using a Fedora Media Writer. Once you install Fedora Media Writer and open it, you'll get to this page. You can then select Fedora Workstation and create a live USB. In this mode, you are a live user. Navigate up and down as much as you can. When you are done, reboot the computer, and when presented with the boot menu again, click on Choose Troubleshooting using up and down keys. Then choose Boot from Local Drive. After a while, the screen below will be presented. Click on Start Setup. On the privacy page, you can choose what suits you best, then click Next. Next will be Connect your online accounts, which you can skip. Next, enter a username and password and click Next. There you go, your setup is finally complete. Click No Thanks. At this point, you are finally ready to use the brand new Fedora 33. The new version of Fedora number 33 has updated key programming languages and system library packages, as will be discussed in the next slide. For all Fedora users, you know what it means when a new release is up for grabs. It means enjoying new features, enhancements, and better performance in general. There has been tremendous improvement in Fedora 33 software packages and programming languages, including Python 3.9, Ruby on Rails 6.0, Boost 1.7, Golang 1.1, and so on. In Fedora 33 KDE, the team has followed the work in Fedora 32 Workstation and enabled the early OOM service by default to improve the user's experience by low memory situations. Early OOM allows users to recover and restore control of the system more quickly in the case of low memory and large amount of exchange. To make the default Fedora experience better, the team set Nano as a default editor. According to the team, Nano is a friendly editor for new users, and those of you who want the power of editors like VIM can of course set your own default. The default partitioning scheme on Fedora Workstation now uses BTRFS. BTRFS is a native Linux copy and write file system. It provides advanced features including error detections, fault tolerance, recovery, transparent compression, cheap snapshots, integrated volume management, and easier administration. BTRFS will be the file system used for the new desktop installation. A new feature is active user resource reserves on workstations. With this enhancement, Fedora adds cgroup-based resource protections for the active graphical session. This is done by passing a memory protections of 250 megabytes to active users, capped at 10% of the system memory, and by enabling other cgroups controls CPU to ensure important sessions process to get the resource they need. The new workstations also contain thermal by default, the thermal daemon harness sensors, and methods to monitor and control temperature of Intel-based CPUs. Due to better improved CPU cooling, Fedora Workstation users can now enjoy a better out-of-the-box experience.
My name is Adam Block, and I'm going to talk with you about CentOS. CentOS is an operating system derived straight from RedHat Enterprise Linux. As a result, it is fully functional with other Red Hat Enterprise Linux distributions. Because CentOS is one of Red Hat Enterprise Linux's main distributions, they aim to provide update packages within 72 hours of other Red Hat Enterprise Linux distributions. CentOS has a long release cycles, meaning that it is very stable because the developers take their time with each update, and functional support for the operating system lasts a very long time. CentOS 7 has an end of life set in the end of June 2024, and CentOS 8 has an end of life set until 2029. The operating system provides support for many cloud servers such as AWS, OpenNebula, OpenStack, and CloudStack. It is a very strong choice for production-based environments and environments which require open-source compatibility such as supercomputers. CentOS can be most easily described as a free version of Red Hat Linux. But how does it differ from Red Hat? It does not have any direct paid support options from the company, which can mean hardware and software compliance is not always guaranteed. As a result, information regarding technical difficulties is best found among collaborations of Linux enthusiasts. Since it does not have direct support, the developers do not publish repositories with metadata which detail security, issues, and bugs, ultimately meaning that this information must be accumulated through third parties. CentOS can use Docker and Kubernetes, while Red Hat prefers its own containerization software where it still may open Docker images. This is called Red Hat OpenShift. CentOS does offer live CD ISOs to repair damaged parts of the system or for creating new testing environments. How does CentOS compare to Fedora? CentOS is fully open source and does not lock certain features behind licensing. It also focuses on slower, more stable releases when compared to Fedora's 6-month release cycle. Because of this, Fedora is typically more up-to-date than CentOS, which allows it to run the latest software that desktop workstations may need to run. Since the updates for Fedora can be less stable than CentOS, it is generally regarded more as a desktop distribution, while CentOS is geared better towards server-based applications. Next, we will go over how to install CentOS as a virtual machine by using VirtualBox. Step number 1. Navigate to centos.org/download to download the ISO file which fits your machine's preferred instruction set architecture. At the CentOS download page, you may select which version of CentOS you wish to download, and you will see the end-of-life date for that version below. Step number 2. Boot up your virtual machine manager of choice and create a new machine. Name the machine and choose Red Hat 64-bit as the version of the machine since CentOS is based off Red Hat Linux. Select the amount of RAM, the hard disk type, and the storage it will have. Step number 3. Right-click the virtual machine and go into the settings. Click on the Storage tab and select the optical drive icon to mount the ISO file to the virtual machine. Step number 4. Start up the virtual machine and press Enter to begin the installation of CentOS Linux 8. Once the initial setup has completed, you will be prompted to select your language. Step number 5. After selecting your language, the Installation Summary menu will show up and you must click on Installation Destination to select the disk you are installing the OS on. Other options such as software selection and network connection options may also be configured. For example, if you wanted to set up an FTP server and store files on it, you may want to check the base environment as server or minimum install and select the FTP server, file and storage server, and potentially the debugging tools options. The minimal install base environment would be ideal if you knew exactly what pieces of software you're going to use on the server, because you can manually install them in the command line after the base installation of CentOS is completed. Once everything is set up, you may click Begin Installation. Step number 6. While the OS is installing, you may set the root password for the system as well as create a new user so that you may immediately log in once the installation is finished. If you click on the Advanced options and User Creation, you have the ability to set a user or group ID for the system. Once that is done, Sit back and grab a cup of coffee while you wait for everything to be installed. The total installation time with 2 cores dedicated to the machine takes around 15 to 20 minutes. Step number 7. Once the installation is complete, do not reboot. Power off the virtual machine and do not save the state of the machine. If you click reboot instead of powering off the machine, you will have to go through the installation process all over again. This happens because the machine will reboot from the ISO installation file instead of from the virtual hard drive. By moving the hard disk to the top of the boot order chain, it will boot from the correct space and allow you to continue with the final steps. Step number 8. To change the location that your virtual machine will boot from, find your virtual machine on the VM Manager. Right-click it and go into Settings and click on System. Here you will drag the hard disk option to the top of the boot order. Click OK and start up the virtual machine. Step number 9. When you reach the next screen, you will see that Finish Configuration is grayed out. Click on the license information and agree to the terms. You will then be able to click Finish Configuration at the bottom of the screen. Once you accept the license information, you can officially log in to CentOS. Step number 10. Once logged in, a few more configurations will need to be finalized. Set up your language settings, keyboard layout, turn off or on geolocation, and connect other online accounts such as Google. Once these settings are configured, you can begin using CentOS. Once the final configurations have been dealt with, a web page will open up showing the help information and user manual for CentOS and other Red Hat Linux products. When you're through browsing and reading some of the information, you can close the web page and begin using CentOS in the way that you have intended to. What are the recommended use cases for CentOS? CentOS is a great operating system to run a server on because of its reliability, stability, and open source compatibility. In fact, 2 of the top 10 supercomputers in the world use CentOS. The 9th strongest computer in the world is built by Dell, and it is called the Frontera system, which is located in Texas, and it runs on CentOS 7. It has over 448,448 cores and has a theoretical peak in performance of 38,745.9 teraflops. It is used for crunching advanced computations and testing artificial intelligence capabilities. The 7th strongest computer in the world is the Joules Booster module, which is located in Germany. It has over 449,280 cores and has a theoretical peak performance of 70,980 teraflops, which runs on an undisclosed version of CentOS. One project this computer works on is the Human Brain Project, where it reconstructs images of histological brain slices and puts them into 3D computer models. Using CentOS can save your company money as it does not require licensing for some service while Red Hat does. With a team of knowledgeable engineers, you may save money and also gain the benefits of being able to use whatever service that fits your needs. CentOS also has very strong security features, and unlike Red Hat Linux, containerization of other programs is possible directly through applications such as Docker and Kubernetes.
Red Hat Enterprise Linux is an open-source, subscription-based distribution of Linux that is used for industry-level solutions in systems development such as financial institutions, healthcare, and telecommunications. Red Hat Linux released its first stable public build in 1995. It gained lots of popularity early on and quickly became one of the big names in Linux. With its 6th stable release in 1999, the GNOME GUI was integrated into the public build. The last release for Red Hat Linux was the 9th stable build in 2004, after which was discontinued. In place of Red Hat Linux, Red Hat released Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which was the same but with the added payment option and included developer support. As for a free version with no developer support, Red Hat immediately sponsored Fedora Linux for individual users. In 2004, CentOS was developed as a fork from Red Hat Enterprise Linux version 2 as another free alternative. Fedora remains today as a fast development cycle, always new Linux, while CentOS remains today as a less frequent but more stable build of the same source code. Linux has never been easier to use on your machine, with software like Oracle VirtualBox or VMware Workstation providing a user-friendly virtual machine interface. Choosing which disk to use, configuring the disk space, and setting up the root user is incredibly easy using their installation wizards. You can also use your favorite bootable disk or USB to install Linux as well. Red Hat Enterprise Linux uses the same source code as CentOS, the only stipulation being that with Red Hat Enterprise, you also pay for their whole suite of applications and industry support, including but not limited to their customer support portal where you can send in tickets asking about production or development problems. By default, Red Hat Enterprise Linux uses the popular GNOME as its graphical user interface. The package comes with a text editor, Firefox as its web browser, Iced-T, which is the Linux variant of OpenJDK, and a nested session manager called Boxes. With Boxes, you can connect to hosts on your server remotely or create virtual machines easily. Most commercial companies would be able to use Red Hat Enterprise Linux if they sell a product service that can be supported by Linux and have smaller, less dedicated departments for software development. These companies would also benefit greatly from the wealth of knowledge supported by the Red Hat team, such as their webinars, tutorials, and consultations. The companies who either specialize in software engineering development or government agencies would not be able to use the paid support system. This is because they could have proprietary builds of the Red Hat source code which would not be supported by the Red Hat team, or they would have far too confidential information to trust another corporation to view.
So what did we learn from this project? We have learned when to use which distribution over another. If it had to be quickly explained, Fedora would be used as a desktop environment for individual users, CentOS would be used for a project which may not need enterprise-level support or a need for more open-source capabilities, and Red Hat would be used for systems which need incredibly stable environments that would benefit from potential support. Red Hat is best when you have engineers that may not be as confident in relying on their own skills when encountering a problem with software. Installing some of the operating systems can be frustrating if you are unfamiliar with some of the common protocols for installing Linux virtual machines. When installing CentOS, it took 3 separate installations before realizing that the boot order must be switched before rebooting the machine. An interesting topic that could have been explored would have been researching exactly why Red Hat Enterprise Linux distributions are so commonly used for supercomputers. It would be interesting to study what makes Red Hat Enterprise Linux distributions so fast, and why so many Red Hat Enterprise Linux distributions, like CentOS and Red Hat, are such top tier in the supercomputing world. On this slide, we have 3 links that could be used for future study of Red Hat Enterprise Linux distributions. The first link goes over some of the supercomputers that use Red Hat Enterprise Linux distributions and describes some of the reasons why they use these distributions. The second link goes over basic CentOS server setup and shows you some steps on how you can do some basic system hardening. The third link reviews some of the different services and licenses and how much they would cost for a system that would be running Red Hat Linux. It could be used to determine how much a system setup may cost and potentially how much cheaper using something like CentOS would be from using Red Hat Linux.